side is, you may remember 280 Group. And 280 Group, as about a month ago, is now product side. And so same company, same thing we do. And I'll stop here because we're not supposed to finish. First of all, thank you for our sponsors. And I'm just going to repeat what was said during the May session. The fact that McCombs has made this facility available to us is just so awesome because it's a first-class facility, and that is usually our biggest expense. So we are more than happy for them to be a visionary sponsor. And of course, the other sponsors too, we are thankful for. So let's talk about what is jobs to be done. So one of the quotes that I heard years ago, right there, is people don't want a quarter-inch hole or drill. They want a quarter-inch hole. And so that's really what it is when we think about jobs to be done. What is it our customers are trying to accomplish? And there's a really important term there is, how are they improving their jobs in a particular way? And I'm going to give you some examples of that, just so that we understand that context of what it means to improve our jobs in a particular way. So first, my job story. As a trainer and consultant, I travel a reasonable amount, much more before COVID, still traveling a little bit now post-COVID. I ride to a hotel, I take out my clothes, hanging them up, and no matter how well I pack my clothes, my shirts are wrinkled. And so all hotels that I've been in have an iron and an ironing board. But here is the problem, is there is no easy place to set up in the room. I see people acknowledging that. There's always like this big open space that I can set up, but there's no electrical outlet there. And the electrical outlets are behind the desk or between beds or, in the bathroom. That's not where I want to iron shirts. And so I kept complaining about all they needed to do is to put an electrical outlet right there, and I would be able to iron shirts in a nice wide open spot. And I kept talking about that. And somebody finally asked me, Tom, aren't you defining the solution? Is that really your problem? That I need an electrical outlet right there? And I was like, you're right. So what is my problem that I'm trying to solve?
Wrinkly shirts.
Whoa, somebody's way ahead of me. Exactly. Yeah. So in the end, the job was, I wanted to remove wrinkles from my clothes. That's all it was. Do I care how I got there? No, I don't. I just wanted to get the wrinkles out of my shirts. But when we talk about jobs, there are different types of jobs. There's the functional job. So that's what we often think of. But in all circumstances, and especially in consumer markets, there are emotional and social jobs that we want to accomplish. And so my emotional or social was look professional for my customers. So what were the pains that I'm feeling? Well, ironing clothes is boring. It was difficult to set up. It took too long. So what are some of the gains? What are some of the outcomes that I wanted to be able to achieve? Is to have more time to, prepare for my meetings, look more professional. That kind of goes on to the, the social aspect of it. So this is the job that I was trying to do. Here's where I was feeling pains and where there were opportunities for me to achieve some gains. So it was then, once I took that story, I realized the importance of jobs to be done. Because do you know how I get wrinkles out of my clothes now? Downy wrinkle release. Sitting there thinking about irons all the time and thought about the ironing, the job to do was ironing shirts. I would have never discovered this, but this is how I learned to really understand jobs to be done. It's not about ironing the shirts, it's about getting the wrinkles out of my shirt. And that's where, if we do jobs to be done and we really understand the need, this opens us up to the world of possibilities of other solutions that we might want to do. Well, why do we care? It's those two things. It keeps us in the problem space. It keeps us and our teams in the problem space. Too often, how many of you in your work, the first thing that you start doing is talking about solutions? Yeah, it is really easy to jump to talking about solutions. Jobs to be done is one way to help keep us in that problem space. And then the second one that I already said is it opens us up to that possibility of innovation. Well, let's look at another product we're all familiar with, the iPod. Did Apple create the need for the iPod? No. Believe it or not, the need has been there for probably as long as man has had music. But many people thought, well, I didn't know I needed an iPod until Apple told me I needed it. No, what you didn't know is you didn't know you wanted an iPod until Apple told you. The need has been there. And even before they introduced the iPod, there were already other MP3 players. It says that they were terrible. They were hard to use. They weren't very friendly. And so what we have to do is detach ourselves from the product and understand what the customers are really trying to do. So if we think about the iPod, I like to think of this. Listen to your preferred music on the go. That need has been here a long time ago. Now, I don't know whether this is really true or not, but in medieval times, according to Monty Python and the Holy Grail, we had minstrels that followed around the royalty. Well, so they were able to listen to the music that they wanted to while on the go. But what was the problem with that?
Expensive.
What's that?
Expensive.
Expensive, yeah. Only a few people could actually afford to do that. Well, I don't know. I'm sure there were other solutions that came along. But in the 1950s, Westinghouse introduced a portable radio. Now you could listen to music on the go. It was open to more people. But what were some of the challenges you think with that?
Power radio signal.
Okay, so when you had a signal at the time?
Power.
Power, okay, yeah, so the battery could only last so long.
Not your preferred music.
It may not always be your preferred music. You could choose channels, but you may not like what they're playing at that particular time. So it advanced, it improved upon the job that was done, but there were still pains that we wanted to have. There were gains. Well, the next big leap forward was by Sony with the Walkman. It helped address many of those problems. I could listen to the music I wanted to on the go, but still there were limitations. What do you think those were?
How many tapes you could
Collection.
Yeah, exactly. How many of these tapes can I carry with me at any given time? So I can't listen to all the music. I can only listen to that music that I can carry with me. And of course there was the Discman, which took a step forward. And then there was the iPod, 1,000 songs in our pocket. So coming pretty close to addressing this need, all the way in terms of listening to the music we want to while on the go. But guess what? Even a product as successful as the iPod must go and rest in peace at some time. So 2 years ago, it was end of life. Why? Such a successful product.
Spotify.
Because we now have a better answer. Yeah. And so you see the job to be done hasn't changed over time. Jobs to be done are solution agnostic. They don't change a lot over time. I will say they will change over time, but they don't change a lot. But our ability to use new technologies, and I use technologies broadly, allow us to come up with new solutions. And those are going to replace the existing solutions. So this model, you may have seen this before, created by Strategizer. So these are the customer jobs. Over here we put the pains, we put the gains here. And what give you a chance to apply this in small groups. So we should be able to do that. I've got about 15 sheets here. So we're going to pass this around the room, break out into groups of about 3 or 4 people. And I want you to talk about this area. It's not really the job, but prepare breakfast for children. So most of you, I think, will have that context. Some of you may not have a context of preparing breakfast for children. And I want you to think about the jobs to be done and work on those. Think about maybe the job at a functional level. Think about it at a social level. Think about it within your current constraints and say, wait a minute, let's break out of our current constraints. Can I elevate this from ironing a shirt to getting the wrinkles out of my shirt? And then think about where are those pains and gains. We're going to have about 10 minutes to do this. So let me just pass, I'm going to drop a couple off in each row and just self-organize into groups, 3 or 4 per group. So who wants to share? Yeah.
How do we start? Do we start with customer job, pains, gains? Where do we start?
Start with the jobs.
Okay. Deliver nutrition to kids.
Okay.
We're gonna not solutionize this at all. What do we mean by that? Kids need to engage with this food. We need to make sure that they end up not being hungry, they got good blood sugar, they need to eat it. We need to provide some options so that kids can choose and want it and not just be like, eat this. No, I won't have a waffle. But like waffles or, kind of thing. And then there's just it needs to be made, it needs to be served, and needs to be cleaned up after.
Okay. So here's the thing. I think this is really important is even though the top level job to be done was provide nutrition for the kids, there were steps that you have to do. One is decide what you're going to provide. Prepare the food, serve the food, clean up. And so as you start looking at each of those, you could probably identify some current pains around each of those steps. Maybe where there's some outcomes you'd like to achieve. Did you get into talking about any of the specific pains?
Yes. We said food fatigue, tired of eating bagels for breakfast or whatever. Kids who are just fussy eaters, just hard to get them to engage with food, just in general. You're in a time crunch. It's the morning, it's breakfast. We gotta go, guys. Let's get this breakfast done. Also, mess. If kids are getting themselves messy when they're eating, if the kitchen is trashed when you're done, you don't have time to clean that up, mess is an issue. And then also just, what's the quality level here? Are we going to McDonald's and buying fast food again? Is this junk food, eat a Pop-Tart, let's go? Quality of food is maybe we're not doing a good job on that. So those were our pains.
All right, excellent. Share has maybe some different perspectives.
Yeah, we can share. One of the things we identified is on similar to what was discussed there.
How did you define the job, first of all?
I'm sorry?
How did you define the job?
From the perspective of the parent.
Okay, which is?
Which is what we wanted to identify as the emotional piece of the job, which is the connection time with the kids.
All right. Different perspective there, isn't it? Go ahead with that.
Yeah, so the pain is that because the same situations that we talked about, the kid is working through mess stuff, and we need to clean up fast, and we need to run and go to school on time and go to work on time. But at the same time, if the key gain that we can get is spending the time with the kid, maybe we're talking a little bit about the solution, but if we can optimize the flow of activities, then we can spend more time with the child.
Yeah, so if I think about the outcomes there, one is reduce the amount of time. Let's go back to this slide here. Because that's what I want you to see here, is there's a desired outcome. There's negative outcomes, there's desired outcomes. One of those is reduce the time it takes to prepare. You're not solutionizing, you're just talking about reduce the amount of time. Increase the amount of time I can engage with my kids, okay? Increase the options available for them. Decrease the bad calories they're eating, perhaps. So none of that is solutionizing, but it's helping us understand better the overall problem space. All right, time for one more.
So one of the variables we were talking about is age, is that even though we talk about child, it's not, most family, I should say most, a lot of times there's a variety of ages. So like when you're trying to do all these things, provide nutrition, deal with the fussiness, all that type of stuff, you have to also consider the age of the child. You can't give the same thing from a toddler perspective to a teenager. So that was one of the.
So
Okay.
we came up with a breakfast bento box. With cute chefs.
All right.
So one comment on that, we talked a little bit about not just the phasing of it, which I think is really important, but if you start at the basic need of the need to be fed as a Maslow's hierarchy, right? For a baby, it's being breastfed or formula or whatever. But as you get into an older age group, the psychology of the eating becomes associated with like status. And so my kids who are teenagers now, walking into high school with a warm, drink in the morning in a coffee mug that's reusable, that's a Simple Modern or whatever, is not the same as walking in with a Starbucks, right? And so both arguably nutritious, right? We'll talk about that at a different level, but it's the notion of our need is to feed them, but their need is to kind of be fed and still feel good about themselves.
That's the
Okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna summarize all this really quickly. One is, remember we said under a particular circumstance. So is the circumstance, we gotta get people fed and out to school? Or is it's a weekend? That's a whole different context. What age are we talking about? That's a different context. And I love that you brought up the need of the parent versus the need of the child also. And so now you start to see, I can unwrap this in many additional different ways. All right, we need to wrap up so you can get to your next session and the next speaker can get ready. So with that, I thought I had a sponsor slide there, but again, thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you.